broad, very diverse, very experienced group, and they can very easily see through a hastily put together proposal. So they still do need your full attention. And granted, it's not a lot of money, but that's something we're going to talk about a little bit later. So.
As much as some external proposals.
Okay, so panel discussion time. Take your seat, Nancy.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, question back in the corner, yes.
Can one apply for two different ones in the same year?
In the same cycle or same year?
Same cycle.
Same cycle. We would strongly discourage you from doing that.
Because you can't be the PI of
You
two
cannot be
funded
the PI of
projects.
two funded seed grants at one time.
Okay.
And we would rather you look at, which type you think you're going to be more competitive in and will be most beneficial to you, and focus all your efforts on that. Yes?
Can you apply for them over and over and over again?
So the guidelines that we have, if you say, get an RC grant, finish that, they're all 1 year in duration. I forgot to point that out. You saw the different performance periods for the different cycles. They're all 1 year in duration. So after you finish that seed grant and say you want to apply the very next cycle, for the same type of grant for another RC, there's a 3-year waiting period. However, if you have, say, if you receive a GEM, you finish that, that's great. You want to apply for another seed grant, but it's a Spark, you can do that right out of the gate.
Or an RC.
Yeah, that's an RC, I meant to say.
Any other
RC.
type.
Yeah, yeah. But if you're applying for the same kind, there is that 3-year waiting period. Yes.
So if a new faculty joins in January, like myself, so I wasn't here for the October one-day workshop, does that mean I'm not eligible for the April submission and I would wait until?
So this is sticky, and I've done it to myself. But if you are applying in the spring cycle for the April deadline, and you have not already attended the fall seminar, proposal writing seminar, you can still apply, with the caveat being, if you end up being awarded, so if you get a July 1 start date for your award, then you must commit to attending the seminar that very fall. And we do track this. We being me. So we, and then I do get questions about the fall deadline as well, because it's April 15th. Normally we have the fall seminar later in October, so 20th, 25th, somewhere around there. And I've had people concerned that, well, I would have attended that before my seed grant proposal goes in. That's fine. We don't start reviewing those until a month and a half, sometimes more, depending on scheduling issues after that. So I'll know whether or not you came to the fall seminar before your seed grant ever hits the review panel. Yes?
Do the grants pay F&As, or are they exempt?
Yeah, these are actually F&A dollars that you are receiving. So no, you do not have to calculate F&A, but you do have to add in benefits if you're paying any kind of salary time or student time. So those kinds of things still apply, but no F&A. Yes?
I think I heard you mention it's a 3-year waiting period.
Yes.
Is that if you are funded, you wait for 3 years before you can completely apply?
Yes, correct. So it's only that 3-year waiting period only applies if you are awarded a seed grant. It's not you applied, oh, I wasn't successful, now I got to wait 3 years again. No, we would not do that to you. So, and we encourage, I mean, more often than not, the proposals that come through the review panel that are not funded are still really good ideas. The review committee feels like there needs to be some more fleshing out, some more thought given to the way that the proposal was written to provide clarity and those kinds of things that you should be aware of as you write any proposal. So we, more often than not, strongly recommend to the faculty member that submitted that proposal to resubmit it the next cycle. And those, tend to be rather successful the second time around. So, yeah. Brian.
The seed grant topic should be the primary focus of the external proposal. The reason I'm asking is like a career award. They want you to have innovative education and outreach activities. And would it be okay to do a seed grant to pilot an outreach activity?
Sure. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. That's, and that's the point of the Sea Grant program, right? It's, we're not giving you a lot of money, but we're hopefully giving you enough money that you can start pilot studies, collect preliminary data, that then gives you that springboard to write a much more competitive, much more successful, hopefully, external proposal. So yeah, definitely, it's going to be pieces of a larger project. We're not expecting you to try to do a small version of an entire project. It can be pieces, whether it's an educational outreach or you need a preliminary study to do a proof of concept, things like that. Good questions. Going to be a good group. Anything else before we turn it over to our panel?
Let us answer some questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's all about me. Okay, so we have our panel. We have Dr. John Morey, who is research professor. Shall we see if I can do this without looking? I've known you for so many years. Research professor and director of the Institute for Antiviral Research in ADVS in the College of Agriculture. Did I do good?
Great.
Thank you. John and I have known each other and been through a lot together. So. Nancy Sassano, who is part of my research development team. She is in the College of Education and Human Services, as a proposal development specialist. My right-hand woman. Teresa Ukrainens, professor, and you are head of the speech pathology program, is that correct?
Sort of, yeah.
Sort of. I've got to look for yours. And assistant department head, communicative disorders and life education, again in College of Education and Human Services. Soren Brothers, who is also an assistant professor, in watershed sciences in the College of Natural Resources, and Brianne Litz, another wonderful assistant professor in instructional technology and learning sciences in the College of Education. Okay, so what I would like each of the panelists to do now is just real brief, talk about their experience with the Office of Research Seed Grant Program. So how many times they've applied, what kinds of seed grants and types of seed grants that they've applied for, by virtue of them, with the exception of Nancy, being on this panel, they are successful seed grant awardees. So I don't have to say they got an award. We already know because they're here. And then we'll dive into some more nitty-gritty details about their, their experience applying and their thought process and those kinds of things after we get through these basic introductions. So, go John.
Well, when I first considered applying for a seed grant, I was impressed with the insights in which this program is focused around, and that is, it's asked you to do things that will help you be successful in applying for extramural grants. And I was very impressed with how it wants you to, in real practice, go to the scientific review officer or whoever that might be at the agency level that you're applying to, query about your idea and about insights that they may have. Our activities at the Institute for Antiviral Research are mostly, almost exclusively, when we apply to grants, are with the National Institutes of Health. So I had unsuccessfully applied for a grant with the NIH, and I needed a little bit more preliminary data. Didn't know how that preliminary data would work out. It was hypothesis driven, and so I looked into doing this. I was impressed with how you're accountable to do your homework to try to figure out how to write this grant. And so that appealed to me, and I took the effort to really communicate in a it's supposed to be short. Really communicate with the scientific review officer, consider what review panel this would go to, try to figure out the composition of the review panel, and those types of things. I sent a specific aims page to the individual. They reviewed it, they got back to me. I had concerns about my approach, and I disclosed those concerns. I was worried that I was making perhaps a fatal mistake in my proposal, when I openly asked the scientific review officer if he thought that was a concern. And he came back with an answer that allowed me to move forward. So it's the first time I tried it, and I really like the process. So congratulations to the VP for Research, to Jerry and others who put that together. I think it's a better way of doing it than just submitting a grant and then giving you the money. I really do. And the training was really good. The one-day training was really good. We really got something out of that. So.
Hear that?
How did I do?
You
promoting?
did good. You stole a little bit of my thunder, but that's okay. Okay. And so what kind of grant did you get, John?
RC.
Thank you.
Just this past round.
Yes.
Yeah, so, good. Hello. So, as Jerry said, I'm one of the proposal development specialists, and I've been working in the College of Education and Human Services with the faculty there for 11, 12 years, Jerry? What is it? Charter member of the university's research development structure, I should say. And I guess for about the past 7 years or so, I've been directly involved with faculty on their seed grant proposal preparation, and have also been serving on the review panel as a representative from our college. So, you know, I've got the perspective of starting from square one with somebody coming and sitting down with an idea and helping determine if it's right for seed grant time, and also then looking at the proposals that come in from all over the university. And the proposals that I review are never from my own college, of course. So the feedback that I can give you when we talk a little more is on how to speak to somebody who is not of your discipline and, you know, be effective in this process. And I think that's about it for me as far as introductions go. So.
Okay. I was awarded an RC grant in this past cycle in October, and I started here at USU. I haven't been here very long. I started in January 2017. I had formerly been at the University of Wyoming, and I had stepped down after too many years as department head, and was trying to get my career going, the research side of my career going, when I came to USU, and then I've been gone through various administrative duties, adding to the challenges. But so I had some preliminary work that I was completing as I came here from Wyoming, and then I went to apply for our National Association, American Speech, Language, and Hearing Association Foundation, a 2-year award. Not that big an award, but significantly bigger than the RC grant. And so I had written it, my grant application for, it was due last April, and then they let us know at the end of September our results. And I had already met with Nancy on trying to prepare for, if I didn't get this award, could I turn it into an RC grant application? And I knew that the timeline on the turnaround would be tight. So I did meet with Nancy ahead of time, and we made a little bit of plans for that, and then I just let it lie until I got the results in September. And then I had to hit it really fast, which was a little tricky because they were different requirements and materials in the application. Plus, I was speaking to a different audience from our discipline's audience. And because it was quite a bit of a smaller grant, I really had to reformulate the study. And I do believe the study's actually stronger now in its smaller format. It was like I had a second chance. I got to look at my reviewers' comments from the foundation. Now I had to ask them to get me them early. They had a strange procedure of, they told you the results in September and then told you get the reviewer comments in December. And so, and I'm this polite person who waits and waits. I thought, don't. I contacted them and they said, oh, well, we can get you your own special results. So it turned out it was okay to ask for something different from the norm. So I did have the reviewers' comments, and they were quite positive. And so I responded to the reviewers' comments, and I think that I actually made a tighter, although smaller scale study. And so then I had that turned in time in October for this cycle. And I did notice that the reviewers on this cycle commented that that the prior unsuccessful grant had been still warmly received, and that that I had attended to their concerns. So I liked how these reviewers were quite attentive to the process that I'd been through to get to that point. And so that's where I am now with this.
Yeah, I'm in the natural resources here. I started as an assistant professor summer 2017. I've done my graduate work in Canada and the US and in Europe, where I didn't have to write grants for any of the research I was doing, so I was pretty new with that. New with US grant funding agencies. I didn't know what NSF was when I arrived here. So I got an RC grant the first year I was here, so I guess awarded spring 2018, and then I just got a Spark proposal awarded, which is currently active. For the RC, it was an opportunity to kick off figuring out how to write grants, starting my research career here. I do research on Arctic lakes, so it was an opportunity to actually get up to the Arctic and get some preliminary data for an NSF. For the Spark, I had a project that was in place that I've been trying to work with a bunch of different researchers in different departments that was looking at desiccation in the Great Salt Lake. And I've been trying to get a local NGO, or we've been trying to get local NGO to fund it, and that wasn't coming together, and time was passing, and then so Spark looked like a perfect opportunity to get this interdisciplinary project just running and off the ground and get us students and people thinking about this issue and kind of moving it to the next level. So that's where I'm at.
I'm Brianne. I started January 2016, and I actually came in with external funding. So as that was kind of wrapping down, looking ahead at what my next project was, that's when I started really looking at the seed grant opportunities last year. And I was awarded a Spark grant. The work that I do is really centered around community partnerships and building and just kind of doing interdisciplinary partnerships. NSF and a number of private funders are starting to really value that, I think. Unfortunately, there's kind of like a chicken and egg situation when you're applying for those grants where they want a partnership and it needs to be kind of well established to an extent, but like you need money to establish a partnership. And so that was what kind of prompted the Spark grant that I got, and it was with Professor Dr. Melissa Teehee in psychology, and then we're partnered with the Edith Bowen Lab School here on campus as well. The primary goal of the grant was to do kind of some pilot implementations in the classroom, but primarily to build a kind of solid foundation partnership that we could then go to NSF and say, hey, we've already been working together for 18 months, 2 years, depending on like when we actually end up getting funded, and that just ends up looking a lot better to those reviewers on those panels.
Okay. So, as I hope was evident as you were listening to all of these individuals talk about who they are and their experience, the Seed Grant program is for everybody. It isn't just for brand new faculty members. It isn't just for established researchers. So we have a couple of very well-established researchers who have managed to, come into the Seed Grant program and be successful. We also have, individuals who are brand new to campus who were able to be successful kind of right out of the gate within their first couple of years of being here. And we have Brianne, who came with external funding, but as she said, the chicken and egg scenario, right? Sometimes you need a little bit of money to develop something that is really beneficial to making you competitive for that external proposal. So all of those things are prime candidates for the Seed Grant program. You at any stage in your career is a prime candidate, or you're prime candidates for the Seed Grant program. So don't feel restricted by your rank, by how much experience you have. This is a great way to get experience in writing grants as well, because we do provide extensive feedback to those who are unsuccessful in this particular cycle. So we hope that helps you understand what people are looking at, perhaps where you need to kind of beef up your skills a little bit. So that we find that we really make a strong effort to provide that kind of feedback to people. We even do that for those who are successful as well, to help you just kind of tweak and fine-tune your message and ultimately your external proposal. So hopefully all of you came and you wanted to come because you have questions of your own. So I'm not going to drive this bus anymore. So start sticking your hands in the air and asking the panel your questions. I do have some of my own prompt questions in case we have a pregnant pause in the discussion. But who's got a question for the panel? Come on. Yes.
They're a dedicated CHAS program, proposal development specialist, or
In College of Humanities and Social Sciences,
that
is that what you mean in CHES?
Yeah.
I don't believe so.
No, we
Right.
being me, I continue to try to get something in place for the humanities and social sciences. I've been unsuccessful to date. But when I talk to people who express a desire to have that kind of assistance in the college, I ask that you talk to your dean, please.
Nancy is hugely helpful for our college. I mean, I didn't have anything like this at University of Wyoming. We didn't have anything in the university like that. And I'd seen at some other top-tier universities, they had that within college level, and it makes a huge difference to have someone that really knows your units and your people and your language. So if you can talk to your deans about it, get yourself a Nancy. And her team.
I wouldn't.
She has a team.
I wouldn't have applied with that.
Okay.
They help with budget.
Just being
So
very
I'm gonna
honest.
contact Nancy.
Yeah.
I think that's the lesson
Well,
here.
I think the lesson is it's worth making the case to your college and really arguing for not just yourself, but I think for the betterment of your colleagues, because having that support, like, I've written grants with other people across the university where like I wasn't the lead PI, so like Nancy probably could have helped, but like if that's not the process, and the amount of things that they have to do, I'm like, I don't know, Nancy does it. Like, I have a Nancy for that.
Well,
This is just ending up Nancy.
well, here's what I would say though, relevant to the seed grants. I totally encourage you to lobby your deans for proposal development specialists for all your grant proposals.
Please.
But
that
as far
helps
as seed
strengthen my
grants
case.
go,
Yes,
talk
grants
to
you
your
can do it.
associate dean for research, because they are the people who sit on the review panels. I basically, am the designated person for our college, but the rest of them are all the associate deans for research, and they all know and hear and see what I do. They may be a little bit less focused on proposal development because they've got a whole lot of other responsibilities, but they know what the seed grant program's about and how to write an effective seed grant, and can give you feedback and advice from your own discipline and things like that.
And they may even be
So-
able to do, Nancy lets us, with permission of the investigators, she's got a collection of previously successful recent grants from our college. And so your associate deans of research might be able to provide some examples of some successful grants within your college too.
And if they can, talk to me and I can get you some examples from your college. Yes, John?
So Lisa Breaux is our associate dean for the College of Agriculture. I see some people in here from the college, and
Lisa
or
or
did I say Lisa? I
Yeah,
meant
Abby
Bettenhoff.
Abby Bettinghoff. And
Yeah.
and anyway, I contacted her, and she approved my proposal, and she really helped me
Gave you
in terms of
feedback.
getting it into. It helped me
Right.
understand who's going to be the audience,
Right.
and being able to write it. So she was really helpful for me. And Lisa from the College of Science, she may even
Sure.
she may even help you out. But Abby was very helpful for me.
Lisa less so now that she's interim vice president for research.
Right.
Yeah. Just ask her.
That's true. She's very supportive and has been very supportive of the seed grant program for many, many years and knows it inside and out. So, depending on her availability, you may be able to get some feedback from her, but go to your associate deans for research first. There was another question over here. Who had their hand up? Or was I imagining Blake?
Nancy, a question for you. What are some of the tips you would give for like most important things when I'm putting this together, my proposal? Or some of the things that people sometimes neglect to do or great weakness?
I think that really the first question that I always start with people is, what's your vision for the external proposal? Because that's what is most often kind of a little bit on the weaker side, and have you done some vetting of your idea with that potential sponsor? You can't, there's a whole section of the seed grant that is about your external funding target. And we want more than just the URL of the solicitation that tells us what you're going to be applying to. We want to know what's your assessment of why this project is going to be attractive to this sponsor, and show evidence of having made some contact, and some, depending on who the sponsor is, some like private foundations and stuff don't interact with PIs, or some, program officers don't respond. But if you have not been able to have direct contact with a program officer, then we need to see that you have assessed somehow whether or not and why your proposal will be attractive to them. So we're really looking for some evidence that putting $20,000 into, or $35,000 or whatever, into a seed grant here is going to pay off. It's not about just funding small projects so you can get some publications and things like that for tenure. It's about the external target. And I think people often wait too long to try to contact program officers. So right now it's what, February, seed grants are due in April. Get on the horn now with your, with program officers, because you may not be able to actually talk with them. But as I think John said, it was really beneficial to have that conversation, to have something concrete to share with the program officer. And that's just like the cardinal rule of all grant proposals. But with seed grants, we want to see that you've got that as part of your repertoire too, because that's going to make you successful in the external grant. And then, just in terms of, as I said, the review panel is a representative from each college, and so our backgrounds are very diverse. And by definition, we cannot review proposals from our own areas. So, I'll be reading engineering proposals and biochemistry proposals and natural resources proposals. So I do a lot of Googling while I'm reviewing, but the less Googling, the better. And, as I think John also said, understanding the audience and being able to, just follow the prescription of what is in the instructions to answer the questions that reviewers are looking for is really what's going to help the reviewers. Because if it's exhausting to just get through like the science or the jargon of what you're reading, then we're going to have a harder time, evaluating the criteria that we need to evaluate. Anyway, but anybody else can chime in on how they sort of strategized about things like that too. Oh, Diane.
My name's Sarah Harper. I'm a postdoc, newer to USU. So first year postdoc here, but 3 years of fellowship total. So 2 questions. As a postdoctoral fellow, am I eligible for these awards? And then a second question, if not, are there any opportunities to be, say, a grant reviewer trainee? Because I've had those experiences in the past where I can kind of dive in and be a reviewer, share my feedback with individuals who have years and years of experience, and that has actually been extremely rewarding and has helped me with my external grants at this point.
Yeah, yep. We always encourage faculty, I'd say when you have the time, but you never have enough time, I know that. But to serve on review panels for the agencies that you're interested in receiving funding from, because you can learn so very much from going through that process. It's very time intensive and laborious, and but what you get on the back end of that will truly make you a much more competitive and effective grant writer in your own ranks.
I guess to specify, like, I've requested to be on review panels with NIA, AHA. At an early career steer point, rarely do they reach out to you?
It's-
Takes a few years.
Yep, it depends on the agency, depends on how badly they're hurting for reviewers. But yeah, don't give up. I mean, if you really, really want to put this as something, you know, that you've done and that you've learned from, keep trying. You'll eventually get there because they always want new volunteers.
Do you know anybody in your field who reviews for those agencies?
Yeah, so I do have formal.
So I would ask them to tell the program officers your name. That's
Okay.
probably the best way to get on a panel. Because when they think of that person, then they'll be like, oh, there's this other new scholar that's in a similar field.
That's coming.
But
That I respect her skills, I think she would do a good job on this, kind of
Yeah.
vet you.
yeah, so whoever your even faculty like is host is here, that person would be a good person to be like, hey, can you tell the people I'd like to review on all the things? Thank you.
Yeah.
What about the other question?
Yeah, going back
Jerry?
to your,
Original, yeah, eligibility.
the eligibility question, and I think I actually have an email that circulated between Nancy and I. from-
Somebody else asked, no, it was not from.
It wasn't from you.
from
Okay, so we
Sarah.
have
It
multiple
was somebody
postdocs
else
who want to be on
outside of
CPATs.
college who asked about it.
So, we don't specify on the website, which you probably already discovered. But because these are returned F&E dollars that fund the Sea Grant program, we, I don't want to say we prefer, but focus of that
Priority is
investment. Yeah, the priority is faculty, individuals who are in permanent faculty lines or permanent research appointments. And so, you know, obviously graduate students, visiting fellows, visiting scholars, those kinds of individuals would not be. Postdocs are a little bit of a gray area. We'd have to take a look at what your role is here at the university, what the longevity of it may be. Because, you know, as I'm sure you can understand, we don't want to fund somebody for a year with, say, for example, $20,000, and then you all of a sudden get a faculty appointment, you know, right out of the gate. Maybe even before you finish the Sea Grant. I mean, that can happen to any faculty member. You know, you'd be, you know, headhunted away from the university, but it's a slightly different situation with faculty.
That's not to say, though, that you couldn't have your mentor be a PI on the Sea Grant.
Yes, you can
and
be
then
a part
you
of
have
Sea
a very
Grant.
strong role in it,
Mhm.
and a strong role in an external grant. So,
Most definitely.
you know, think about that. But the thing is that, you know, the Sea Grants also, I would say another maybe pet peeve, is that these are really not to be focused on funding like faculty effort necessarily, summer months. I think what I have seen is that there's much more of a priority given to giving your graduate students experience in, you know, in this research. If there's, you know, you have to have a justification for effort on any, you know, any time when you're, you know, submitting a budget. But there's always a real priority given to wanting to see students involved in the research that's being done for the Sea Grant.
More questions? Yes.
So, do you have an overall budget for this upcoming cycles, and how do you individually, you know, decide how much money you will fund in each of the categories?
So we normally have somewhere between $350,000 to $400,000 for a fiscal year, so that covers both cycles. So roughly, you know, 200,000, maybe a little bit less per cycle. We don't have a quota that we're trying to fill in each of those cycles, so it's not like we need to fund 2 GEMs and 6 RCs and 3 Sparks. It all depends on the applications that come in and then the quality of those applications. So we review them as a solid pool and see which applications rise to the top. Some are very clearly ones that we should fund, are well written, the science is you know, spot on, the research is spot on. Everything just looks like it would be a very successful project and would make for a successful, potentially very successful external proposal. So those rise to the top. We have a lot in the middle, and then we have some that just, you can tell the applicant just didn't put a lot of time into it. I cannot think of a time where we rejected an application outright because we thought the science was bad. That's, I don't remember ever that happening. So ones that kind of fall to the bottom of the heap are those that, you know, did not write to the right audience. They did not address all of the questions that were asked for in the materials that you have to respond to. So the middle portion, then we start trying to figure out, okay, if we find this many, that means we have this much money left. So there's kind of a balancing act that we do, but again, we're not trying to meet a quota. We're just trying to fund the proposals that are, you know, really stand out in the group. And sometimes, you know, we end up not funding everything that we have in the pool for that particular cycle. But it really comes down to the quality of the proposal that you write. Yes, sir.
I have a question for Jerry and for Nancy.
Okay, you're not
So
part of
in-
the audience,
as you
John.
sit in the review sessions, and you made the comment that, well, the scientific merit and how, you know, really solid that is. You know, if you're reviewing a mechanical engineering proposal, you may not have a handle on that as much. So what are the two top criteria that end up in discussions that really leads to the funding of the proposal? The two top criteria. If it's not going to be the technical, what are the two top
Well, I was
criteria?
hearing say, make it clear what your external plan is going to be and follow the instructions.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, Nancy's just
people
saying.
have sat on the review.
Right. I would say we need to be able to communicate in your science in a way that you are expecting that a non-expert is going to be reading this, for one thing. So that helps us determine whether it's, you know, pretty solid. And just having a clear explanation of your methods and what you're doing without and again, you know, you're limited in pages and all of that, but you know, without necessarily getting into the nitty-gritty of lab procedures and things like that, but enough of a step-by-step explanation of your research plan that makes sense, that's logical, so that you know, we can see that, you know, this is going to happen. The other thing that I've seen that is often puts something, you know, puts a proposal like in a you know, tenable situation is it might be a really solid project, but we can't see that completing this work is necessarily going to do anything to strengthen the external grant. So you have to really communicate that this has to be done in order for us to be competitive, and not just saying, you know, that, you know, this would be good information. You know, it's like it's not just a distinct project, but, you know, is it going to help that external project, that external grant, be more competitive? And it's not always, you know, it's not just always understood. It has to be really, like, conveyed very clearly. And also, you know, the section about how this relates to the PI's career, that's another section in the, you know, in the requirements. You know, where does this fit in your research trajectory, in your career? And I often suggest people, you know, include like even some kind of a graphic. It doesn't have to be very fancy, but here's what I've done before. This is my area. This is where this project, you know, this is this project here, and it's going to lead to these other things. And, you know, sometimes it's the external grant is one piece of it, and then it's even showing like my bigger picture of my long-term career goals. And, you know, it doesn't have to be a thesis, you know, but...
Don't have room for a thesis.
Right, but, you know, it has to, we have to see that this is going to be something that's, you know, continued, that's going to lead to something.
some, additional expertise.
Can I respond to that as well? So my name is Blake
Yeah.
Ellis. I'm the interim associate vice president for research, and I've been tasked being responsible for the Sea Grant program. And I sit on the review panel as well. I think it's easy to get pretty focused into what we do, because that's what we do. We're really good at it. But Sea Grant, as Nancy said, it's really about good communication. You're trying to communicate to people who are not experts in your field. So if you can tell a compelling story as to what I'm going to do and why somebody's going to care about this, what the impact is that's going to come from this, that's compelling to us to read and say, wow, this is a good idea. And there's somebody at a funding agency who also thinks it's a good idea. That's almost a slam dunk. I had a colleague in my college who said, I wrote a proposal to submit it to the Sea Grant program, and I submitted it to NSF. Sea Grant didn't fund it, NSF did fund it. What the heck?
You don't need seed funding then. Let the NSF pay for it.
That's one answer, and that's very true. But on the other hand, the point is you're not writing a technical proposal to one of your funding agencies in the Sea Grant program. You're writing it to a bunch of people who aren't in the program. So good communication. Take a few minutes, synthesize the important things down. Sometimes it's easier to write one page or 50 pages than it is to maybe write 8 or 10. But tell us the compelling things. What's the big picture? What's going to come to this? And then how you're going to go about doing it and why people are interested. That's a good story. So if you don't have a good story, if you can't follow the story, it's less likely to be funded.
I just want to add on that point. So I largely submit to like the education world at NSF, but those panels are very interdisciplinary. And so like the practice of articulating to an audience here, an interdisciplinary audience here is very valuable to what the composition of the panel is actually going to be that's going to review our proposal. And so I think that varies by directorate, so understanding that, we have copied and pasted large amounts of our Spark grant submission for publications, for additional grants. It's definitely not done in vain because we're able to articulate as an interdisciplinary team one narrative, which took a lot of time to tell, but we have reused it. We did it last April. It's not even been a year yet. We've got a few publications from it, and we just copy and paste the text out. We have another grant going in here for the next iteration, so it's a lot of work, but I definitely think that being able, for us anyways, and where we're submitting, being able to communicate to a diverse audience is really important.
It's never in vain. Writing proposals is never in vain, even if you don't get funding. Just like Brianne said, you can repurpose that work that you put into that for so many other things, whether it's a smaller grant, like the Seed Grant, or perhaps to a foundation, or pubs. You can always use that information, and just going through the process of getting it down, like you said, is so valuable to help provide clarity and that ability to communicate to different audiences. And that is such a valuable skill in this kind of work. Yes, ma'am.
So, can you clarify, any of you, is the proposal, the details of the methods and the proposed projects and experiments or whatnot, is it meant to be closer aligned to what the actual, greater than $1 million, whatever it would be, extramural proposal project would encompass, and that you want support for some specific bit of that, and you want to be able to see what the bigger picture is? Or is it just a proposal for a smaller set of experiments with a brief description or, sort of explanation for how it would fit into a larger proposal of experiments for a later application? Or both?
So I'm just going to respond because I have to go teach.
Just getting her last word.
And then,
But I've got a thought on that too.
yeah,
so go ahead.
I guess, so from my perspective, as someone writing the grant, we positioned the project as a piece of something we needed in order to submit to the external funding agency. In our proposal, though, we map out our vision for what we plan to submit, what the bigger project is supposed to be. So you get however many pages, and then there's a page that you can, it's an extra freebie, honestly, to be able to outline exactly how this aligns with the external target funding agency, and so we had like a little bit in our actual proposal, and then we had a whole other page that outlined like essentially our vision, how it fit into the grant. We also had like backup if our initial got like rejected or it got declined in funding. But I'm guessing everybody probably took a different approach to that. My impression is there's not really a right or wrong answer. But,
I think the answer is it depends, and you just need to be convincing that what you're going to do is going to make a difference in whatever you're applying for next.
Yeah.
I would also say that there is a whole, bullet point section of the relationship of the seed grant project to the external funding goal. So the methods in the introduction and seed grant project description should be your seed grant project. And then, as Brianne said, both in that one page about the external funding target, you can talk about the relevance, but really in that other section about the relationship of the seed grant to the external goal is about why that has to be done in order for the external grant to be more competitive.
I'm happy to answer anybody's questions or review materials. My email is up there.
Yes, please, let's thank Brianna for her time.
So we are more, I understand your question.
That's correct.
Because you could put voluminous amounts of detail in there.
Yeah.
And if you could get the reviews of what my grant looked like, they may say, well, we like the overall approach, but we hated the materials and methods because they were way too detailed, or they like it. I mean, I don't know how I did on that aspect, but guess what? You can walk across the hall and you can look at or I can send you my proposal to see how I handle it. It's a balancing act with any proposal that you write. How badly do you want to labor that reviewer to see the details and still tell them that you're going to do it methodologically, you're going to do it correctly? I mean, that's the challenge, right? So I'd be happy to share my proposal with anybody who would like to look at it, but I don't know whether I got very good reviews on that aspect of my proposal.
Well, shall I ruin it for everybody? John's proposal rose to the top. We didn't even discuss it. It was one we knew we were going to fund. It was based on quality of the proposal that he submitted.
The initial scores.
Yep, so everybody gets scores. But the discussion comes when, when it needs to. And there were a few in this last round that they just came in very well prepared, very clear. Everybody knew what it was about and was in support of funding it. So.
Well, and it's just like a lot of the
question.
Okay, so it's just like a lot of review panels though, where they come in and they triage off the bat. They go, okay, what are the scores? Blah 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 blah. Here's the top 50%. These ones, they don't even make the mark. We don't have time.
Okay,
well, it's the same thing in the seed grants.
I want to get Soren's input.
I'm just going to add one really quick comment on there. In terms of my experience with the Research Catalyst too, I tried to set it as a piece of a puzzle for preliminary data for this external grant, but then it also became something that evolved through doing that it totally changed what I realized needed to be done for an external grant. So there's some room for flexibility where I have sort of a step ahead in terms of what needs to be done in this field because I have that view.
Okay, question in the back.
Yeah, I had a question. If you're thinking about applying for the mentor one, the GEM, do you have any recommendations on who a mentor would be? Or are there certain things that make certain mentors rise to the top?
So I tried very hard to get someone who had an active or recently funded GEM award, but they're all off doing their research. But as far as a mentor goes, the whole point of having the mentor aspect to that particular type of seed grant is to help you understand what it's going to take to be successful at your targeted funding agency, the external. So some of the really, really effective mentorships that we've seen come through are faculty have selected a mentor that has been very successful at, for example, NSF.
Certain funding agencies.
Or a particular foundation that's notoriously difficult to get money from. So being able to have that person that you can talk to and help guide you through the development of that external proposal is what it's all about. So you're looking for someone who, you know, isn't just going to read your proposal like you can get from any colleague right before you submit it. It's a real active relationship to help you understand what it takes to be successful externally in your particular field. It isn't just tokenism. There's a real role for that person in your project. What else? What time is it? Oh, we're almost done. Goodness gracious. Time for one more question. How about that of the panel? Jeff.
Should target agency be to allow it?
No. No, we fund foundations that don't, you know, projects that are ultimately going to submit to foundations that don't give any of that. Just as, you know, I don't want to say just as often because those types of applications don't come through a lot. But they get equal consideration as an NSF proposal that's going to work for them. So that has no bearing. No bearing at all. So don't think of that as a barrier to your entry into the seed grant program, whether or not your external agency funds full F&A or not. It's about you as a researcher and supporting your research and making you a stronger researcher ultimately in the end. It's not about, I mean, yeah, you hear F&A all the time, how important it is, we need more F&A, get more F&A, all of this. Yes, that is true. And like I said, the seed grant program is funded by returned F&A dollars. My position, Nancy's position, funded by F&A return dollars. But the point of the program, like I said, is to make you stronger. It's not about trying to get as much F&A as we can get. What else? Anything else? Okay, if you want, if you haven't already seen the website, about this will help you figure out what goes into every single type of seed grant. If you have questions, contact me. I can get you anything, almost anything that you want. I've been around with this program for a long, long time. I've seen it all. If you want examples of successful proposals, like I said, let me know, and I can see what I can get for you. Obviously, I need approval first before I send those out. But any questions, just contact me.
Help yourself to refreshments as well.
Yes, thank you, Pastor.
Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it.